what are the things that could possibly happen? What are the reforms that they may look at? Well, let's take a look at some. What would it take to restore it? Well, firstly, let's look at increasing maximum earnings subject to Social Security tax, currently $168,600 in 2024. What does that mean? Well, for those who are not aware, that if you make more than $168,600 in 2024, you no longer pay that 6.2% I mentioned earlier. You still pay the 1.45 to Medicare. There's no ceiling, there's no cap on paying into Medicare. But for Social Security, if you make $168,600 or more, you no longer pay into the Social Security system. The 6.2% is waived. So in other words, you get a raise. Yes, so that's current course and speed. One of the things they're looking at is removing that. So it doesn't matter that you're at 168.6, you still pay the 6.2. If you're at 200,000, you still pay the 6.2. But right now, that's not the law. The law says that 168,600, you no longer pay into the 6.2% into the Social Security system. Honestly, I think that's an easy fix. I don't know why that isn't just lifted and it's changed. And that if you make whatever you make, you're paying into Social Security, period. So that's one thing. That's just one thing that they could possibly do to impact and change the system. Number two, raise the normal retirement age. Now, I'll just share with everyone out there, I think this has legs. And the reason I think that this is a very real possibility is because it's already been done once. If you remember back to the Reagan administration, it used to be that everyone retired at, 65, then it turned to 66. And then in Reagan's administration, they changed it again. They changed the full retirement age to 67 for everyone born after 1960. So if you were born, and the way they did it is they did kind of a graded schedule. So if you were born, for example, in 1957, your full retirement age was 66 and 6 months. If you're born in 58, it's 66 and 8 months, 59, 66 and 10 months, until you got to age 60. You were born in 1960, and if that be the case, then your full retirement age would be 67. So here's something that is very real, and I think this is going to be something they look at very seriously. Let's just say you're born in, let's pick a year. You're born in 1990. Well, I think they're going to raise the normal retirement age for those born in 1990 and beyond to something higher than 67. I wouldn't even be surprised if they made that 70. So if you were born in 1990, your full retirement age is now 70 years old. They would skip over 68 and 60, go right to 70. Why? Because people are living longer. People are living longer. If you look at how Social Security was built back in fact, in my interactive session, I usually ask this question. When did Social Security begin? Well, it was back in 1935. Well, in 1935, what was average mortality? Well, let's be honest. In 1935, if you lived till 65, you were considered old. Let me just state that. So if you were only collecting on the system at age 62 and you were dead by 65, how many years were you stressing the system? Yeah, exactly. What's average mortality now? Well, it's not 65. For men, I think it's age 87, 86, something like that. For women, I think it's a year or two higher than that. So you've added a whole bunch more years of people drawing from the system, and you have fewer people paying in. Not a good combination. So I do think, number two, they are going to raise the normal retirement age to what? To be determined. But I would not be surprised if they raised it till 70 for those born in 1990 or 1995, whatever it might be. Lower benefits for future retirees. Well, there have been years that the Social Security COLA, cost of living adjustment, have been zero. These last few years, it has been actually very favorable. We're sitting here in January of 2024. The increase this year was 3.2%. A year ago at this time, the increase, I think, was 5.9% or 5.6%. The year before that, it was 8.6%. So the last 3 years, there have been some nice increases. They're talking about lowering those increases perhaps, or or making them go away. I just don't think that's a reality, only because things constantly go up and cost more. I'm sorry, I got the two mixed up. Reduced cost of living adjustments. That's, I skipped over. I talked about number 4. They reduce the cost of living. 3.2 is what it currently is at. I'm sorry, I skipped on to number 4. And I just don't see that as feasible as I'm lowering that, because things always go up. Let me go back to number 3, lower benefits. What they're talking about there is basically lowering what they're currently paying out to folks who are living on these checks. I just don't see that as feasible either, because there's too many people that rely on this check for their retirement income. And incidentally, it was never meant to be a retirement plan. Social Security was a social insurance program designed, if you recall, back in the 1930s. We had only single income families, predominantly the male. So we just had come out of a world war back then and didn't know it, but we're heading into another one. Well, back then, you only had one income normally. Women stayed home and raised the kids. So to say that you're going to lower the benefits now for future retirees, I just don't see that as feasible. But that is something that they're looking at and hasn't gone away yet as far as what they're looking at. So those are the just 4 items: the increase of the earnings. So don't cut it off at 168,600. Raise the normal retirement age, another possibility that they might do. Lower benefits going out the door, or reduce the cost of living adjustments. So those are all feasible, still looking at them, that type of thing. The bottom line, though, for baby boomers that are on my call, I would not be concerned about your Social Security benefit. I do believe it will be there, and I do believe it'll pay out to you. They will fix it. In the past, I didn't mention this, but in the Reagan administration, I think the month of or the month before they were going to have trouble paying out 100% of the benefit, Congress passed legislation that fixed it, and that's when they changed the full retirement age. I do believe they'll do something similar. We run in 4-year presidential elections. 2030, well, let me just go back. I think it was 2034. Well, we're only in 2024. That's someone else's problem. That's 2.5 presidents away. And that's really how they look at it, honestly. That whoever wins in November of 24, I don't think you're going to see Social Security as a big item on their platform, only because it's good through 2034. It's unfortunate, I agree, but that is how the system works. And we all know if they took, the sooner they take action, the less drastic the action would need to be taken. But unfortunately, they're probably not going to take much action on this. That's my view of it anyway. Okay, so again, those who are on the call, you're boomers, please, I think you'll be fine, so please plan accordingly. Okay, so what's a clearer way to think about Social Security? I think the best way to think about it is that it's an inflation-protected income. You can't say that about pensions. For those that still get them, many pensions are no longer. You're getting a 401k plan now. You do not get a company-paid pension. So it basically, Social Security is a inflation-protected income. You've paid the premium in every paycheck. Again, that's the 6.2% you're paying. So be smart about when you go to collect this thing. Obviously, because it's inflation-protected, the higher you allow that check to be before you turn it on, the more impactful the inflation protection will be. So that's just kind of a hint on how you might want to look at this. So, and just to give you an idea kind of how that might work, Social Security offers income you can't outlive. So it's going to last as long as you do. You can't outlive your Social Security. So it is a guaranteed check that you'll get every month. So interestingly, though, I'll just show you some stats here. So if you took, let's see, $2,000 today for 10 years, so that would be, basically $262,793. Well, last I looked, $2,000 a month for, 12 months is, $24,000 times 10 years is $240,000, but you get $262. Well, that 22,000 or so extra, that's the effect of the cost of living adjustment. In my case here, in my example here, you see the small print, that's 2%. I'm assuming it's 2%. You recall earlier that I said this month you're getting 3.2. Last year you got over 5. The year before that you go over 8. So I'm a little conservative in my 2%, but I like to just share it that way. So, but you can't outlive it. That's one of the better benefits of Social Security. So here it's just stated another way. If your monthly income is $2,000 and you have a cost of living adjustment of 2%, well, in 10 years, that's going to be, that 2,000 is going to be 2438. So yeah, and nothing ever goes down, by the way. So these cost of living adjustments prove to be pretty critical for folks. How much can I expect to receive? I do think this is important that people understand how this works. And it's really going to depend on two things: how much you earned over your working career and the age at which you decide to apply for benefits. Okay, and this is how they actually calculate it. So at age 62, each year's earnings are tallied up and indexed for inflation. The highest 35 years of earnings are averaged. It's called your AIME, the averaged indexed monthly earnings, AIME. So the highest 35 years. I want to emphasize highest. It is not consecutive 35 years. It's the highest 35 years. And the reason that's important is because you may have had some gaps in those 35 years of when you perhaps left the workforce to raise a family, or for some reason you were unemployed. Maybe you were unhealthy. Who knows? But you would pick the highest 35. Now, here's what's really important. Well, Kevin, what if I don't have actually 35 years? Well, what happens is that in the formula, and this will lead into how you can actually collect more from the system with a strategy. If you don't have 35 years of earnings, and let's just say you have 31 years of earnings, what Social Security does is they add 4 years of zeros to the 31 years of earnings that you have. And you know as well as I know, anytime you add a zero causes the average to go down. So later in life, if you can work another year or two and replace any of those years that they're earning years that they're tallying, if you can replace that zero, that goose egg, with any number, it's going to cause your primary insurance amount, which is the amount you would receive at full retirement age, to go up. So the next part, that's just 35 years is what they use. It is very critical that you understand that and you have 35 years of numbers. So the AIME is then divided by 3 bend points to determine your primary insurance amount, or your PIA. The primary insurance amount is the amount of money that you will receive at your full retirement age. The benefit is increased each year by a cost of living adjustment as long as one is approved. So a cost of living adjustment is not a guaranteed thing. There have been years where the cost of living adjustment has been zero. Not in the recent past, okay, not over the last 3 or 4 years, but there have been years. I've been doing this for more than almost 15 years, this presentation. There have been years where there have been no cost of living adjustment. So just be aware of that. All right, so if I go ahead and take an example, and let's look at a boomer who was born in 1962. So they basically turned 62 in 2024. Very easy. So maximum Social Security earnings since age 22. What does that mean? Well, it means that since they started, remember back I said this year the max was $168,600, I think I said. Above that, you would not pay into Social Security the 6.2%. You basically would get a raise. Well, what I'm saying here, this maximum Social Security earnings every year that you participated in Social Security, you made the most amount of money. So back in 1984, for example, the maximum I think was like $42,000. And all I'm saying is that every year since you were age 22, you basically made the maximum amount of money to contribute into the program. So if I take a look at this boomer born in 1962, and they contributed they made the max amount of money since age 22. Their AIME is 13,100. Now, where did I get? And again, the AIME stands for average index monthly earnings. Where did I get that from? Well, that's the amount of money that you would be entitled to at full retirement age. It's your basically what they calculate for your 35 years of earnings. That's how they calculate. And Social Security calculates an AIM for everybody. Everyone gets an AIM calculated. So how does the PIA formula work? Well, of that AIM of $13,100, the first $1,174 is multiplied by a bend point of 0.9. Everyone's formula works this way, by the way, and it comes up with a factor. In this case, it's $1,056.60. The next $5,904 is multiplied by a bend point of 0.32, and the last $6,022 is multiplied by a bend point of 0.15. So if you add up the 1174, the 5904, and the 6022, it adds up to $13,100, which is the aim. So I multiply those bend points out. I come up with a factor. The factor adds up to $3,849.18. Okay, great. What's that? Well, that's your PIA. That's your primary insurance amount. So that would be the amount of money that that worker would receive at age 67, because that's their full retirement age. They would receive $3,849.10. Incidentally, that is not a typo. I know up above it says the total is $3,849.18, but Social Security rounds down. So it's $3,849.10. So if they made the maximum, contributed the maximum into Social Security for 35 years, and they decided to start taking their Social Security check at age 67, they would get $3,849.10. That's how you calculate it. So you can see how having a full 35 years of numbers is going to impact this, because your aim is going to be higher than if you only had, in my example, 31 years. Your aim is going to be lower than that. So you want this aim to be as high as you can make it.